James Doakes may not have been the most likable guy at Miami Metro, but he was probably as virtuous as anyone there, if not more. Let's take a peek inside his mind and break down the many misconceptions about Sergeant Doakes' background, motives, and more, beginning with the incredibly troubled childhood that started it all. Not much is known about James's young life, but based on what we do know, it seems like it was not a walk in the park. His father was revealed to be abusive to everyone in the household, and he had a humble position as a butcher, so it isn't as if the family was sitting in the lap of luxury either. These facts were disclosed by Special Agent Frank Lundy during the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation, and unfortunately for Doakes, it only made it seem more likely that he was the true culprit.
We looked into his background. Turns out his father was a butcher and abusive. Doakes was also a trained assassin in special forces.
And of course, his sour attitude didn't help. As for the rest of his family, Doakes' mother and two sisters seemed to really love him, so there was a slight silver lining, a bit of peace in the chaos.
You've been asking who's been calling. My mom lives here.
Did you forget your laundry?
She's been owing me to stop by for dinner, so I'm stopping by now.
Sadly, it doesn't seem like that was enough to make up for the degradation he faced at the hands of his father. His mother and sisters seem to have bounced back from the tough times, but for James, it wasn't so easy. He craved order and discipline, even as a young man, and that's something he would find in the military. Doakes quickly rose through the ranks during his time in the military, which positioned him to enter Special Forces as a black operations agent. There is no doubt that James already knew the signs of a criminal before he entered the military, given how his father behaved. But his time in the Black Ops honed and perfected those senses. And during his time in the service, James would witness unthinkable atrocities. He had to kill a lot of people, but he felt righteous about his missions, knowing what his targets had done. The people Doakes eliminated were known to torture, assault, and kill innocent victims. They went around treating people lower than dirt, so when Doakes had the chance to take care of them, he was more than willing to do so. Sound like anyone we know. Doakes, Dex, I'm just saying. While stationed in Haiti, James took out several opponents who used brutal means to control the local and indigenous people around them. He may have become hardened to taking these warlords and violent criminals out, but seeing what they did to the civilians in the area still scarred him deeply.
Metro Dispatch, this is 3 Henry 88 out of the Marina View Hotel. I need uniform backup, forensics. Just send everybody out.
By the time he left the service, James had severe PTSD, and it would shape the way he moved throughout the world for the rest of his life. That was in addition to coping with his father's abuse. He was still pretty young when he served, and James still had yet to ever feel completely safe in his entire life. From a tumultuous home life to a life of killing on command, James desperately needed a change of pace. That is when he decided to transition from Special Ops to Miami Metro. But it seemed even there he couldn't relax.
Angel, you keep up with this woo-woo shit, I'ma walk right through you.
His keen sense to sniff out weirdos and criminals helped him advance in the homicide department, but it also stopped him from being able to leave his work at the door at the end of each workday. At times, Doakes became obsessed with some of his cases to an unhealthy degree.
Yeah, you can give me your fucking analysis on the blood spatter on these killings. You think I'm here to invite you to my nephew's bris?
He was dedicated to catching his man at almost any cost. And for a while, that may have been okay, but after a while, his methods strayed further and further away from protocol. And for someone interested in keeping their job, that is a major issue. But James couldn't change who he was any easier than a tiger could change its stripes. He would become violent with suspects during investigations, screaming in their faces and even physically attacking them when he'd had enough.
Whoa! You think it's a coincidence your ass is in here?
But one of the worst instances of his questionable actions behind the badge came when he chased down a criminal he recognized from his time in Black Ops. James saw Jacques Bayard while riding through Miami with Angel one day. They were working on a completely different investigation, but that wasn't going to stop James from chasing Bayard down. James knew that Bayard was a fugitive from Haiti who had done unspeakable things during the military occupation. He wasn't going to let Bayard get away again. He demanded Batista stop the car and chase the suspect on foot. His physical ability was on full display there, and Bayard didn't stand a chance once Doakes was locked in on him. Of course, Bayard still tried to run, but it was no use. As soon as Doakes spotted him, it was like a switch flipped. Doakes was relentless, fueled by his trademark intensity and his direct ties to the military underworld in Haiti. This pursuit wasn't just some run-of-the-mill chase for James, it was personal. In this moment, it was clear why Doakes was so feared.
Hey!
Because once he had you pinned, there was no shaking him. Before the dust settled, Bayard was shot dead, and Doakes was placed under investigation by the police department's internal affairs for killing a man without any obvious probable cause. His story wasn't adding up. Bayard appeared to be a law-abiding citizen, at least in the US, and even Doakes' own partner, Batista, had to admit that he didn't see a gun before Doakes started chasing the suspect. It was looking more and more likely that Doakes shot first, and that could be a career killer for him. But he had friends in high places, and Maria LaGuerta all but made the investigation go away because she knew that Bayard was the real bad guy in the situation.
This man, Jacques Bayard, if he did those things, he deserved a lot worse than he got.
No matter who shot first, what is important about the entire ordeal is that James Doakes was dedicated enough to justice that he would kill a killer and lie about it to ensure that he would be able to keep doing it when necessary, and he would definitely do it in the future. Again, that is sounding pretty familiar, isn't it? Doakes didn't want to hurt innocent people. He was actually disgusted by people who did so. He wasn't as melodramatic about it as some people, but he had a deep-seated need to protect people and wanted to go through as many appropriate channels as possible to do so. But it wasn't only in his work life that Doakes had trouble fitting in. One thing about PTSD is that you can't control how it manifests. Doakes rarely visited his own family, and he had a series of unhealthy romantic relationships too. Doakes was married once, but he had developed such a short temper after leaving the military that he was constantly at odds with his wife. In the end, he decided to leave his marriage because he was afraid that he might kill his own wife. After that, he had a brief relationship with Maria LaGuerta, but that fell apart as well, partially due to LaGuerta's need to climb the ladder at Miami Metro, and partially due to Doakes' obsessive nature when it came to certain cases. But he had developed such a short temper after leaving the military that he was constantly at odds with his wife. After things ended with Maria, Doakes had an affair with one of his co-workers' wives as she geared up to ask her husband for a divorce. But that came to an unexpected end when she was murdered. He seemed to have a small crush on Deborah for a while, but she was dating Rudy Cooper, aka Brian Moser at the time, so he never really went for it. It seemed that when it came to matters of the heart, Doakes was open to love, but he was never able to make it stick for one reason or another. Before you watch any further, I'm happy to finally announce that I'm releasing the first limited drop of my t-shirts. At the start, there are only 100 available, so make sure you buy them while you can at dtmerch.store. Enjoy the video. It's really sad to witness, but it's very common for people with backgrounds like his. He didn't want to hurt the women close to him, but how can he have a successful relationship if he had trouble showing his emotions or even being remotely vulnerable? After his first marriage, his relationships were all either hidden or stunted before they ever really began. He didn't have many friends either. Doakes was capable of in-office banter, and his partners on the job seemed to really appreciate him, but rarely was he seen hanging out with them outside of work. Other than Maria, Doakes was stern with everyone around him, regardless of how closely they worked together. But the person he was most combative with was Dexter. Within the first 20 minutes of the entire series, Doakes makes it quite obvious how much he disliked Dexter. He was so openly aggressive towards Dexter that it confused everyone around them. Most people found Dexter to be harmless, maybe even charming, but Doakes didn't buy his act for a second. Just like during his time in the military, Doakes' instinct instincts were spot on. He wasn't able to prove it right off the bat, but he knew that something was very wrong with Dexter, something criminally wrong, and he wasn't going to let up until he figured out what it was. Sure, Doakes started off being rude and condescending to Dexter. He never hid his suspicions, and some of the things he did to catch Dexter were borderline illegal, but his heart was in the right place every step of the way. If Doakes was right about Dexter, which he was, he could have saved innocent people's lives by taking him in. Everyone looks at Doakes as a villain, but was he? An antagonist to Dexter maybe, but a villain? Nothing could be further from the truth. What police officer worth their position wouldn't want to stop a person they believed to be a criminal, possibly a killer? It was nothing short of his duty to stop Dexter from creeping around his city, stealing cases away from the justice system, and killing people as he saw fit. Not only that, but he kept it as civil as possible for as long as he could with a person he suspected to be a killer. It was only after the several odd coincidences he saw during the ice truck killer case that he went to more extreme measures to catch Dexter. And even then, he was still pretty gracious after one very pivotal moment, a moment orchestrated by none other than Dexter himself. Doakes started tailing Dexter everywhere he went after the ITK investigation wrapped up, and Dexter knew it, of course, because Doakes wasn't hiding it. Dexter did everything he could think of to get Doakes off his case, from trying to seem painfully normal to slitting his tires, but nothing was going to hide him from Doakes' watchful eye. That was, of course, until Doakes found him at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting one night, and this again showed that Doakes had no interest in hurting innocent people. For a long time, he had assumed that Dexter was stalking around and acting strangely because he was a killer, but when he saw Dexter at the NA meeting, he softened almost immediately. He was pleased with himself for finally figuring out what he believed to be Dexter's secret, but Doakes was no longer interested in following and being overly hostile towards him. Doakes showed sympathy and understanding towards Dexter's made-up substance abuse problem and told him that he would lay off of him, only encouraging Dexter to get better and stay out of his way. Would a crazed maniac respond this way? Would an evil cop with a chip on his shoulder show that level of consideration? Certainly not. Doakes was doing what he thought was right when he started following Dexter, and when he was made to believe that one of his fellow officers was struggling against their own demons, Doakes completely switched gears. He had demons himself, man. He battled them every day. So Doakes knew how difficult it could be to cope with trauma and heal past scars while working within the homicide department. Thinking that Dexter was in a similar boat and at least trying to get better changed Doakes' outlook on the situation entirely in an instant. Doakes actually did care about the people around him, even the people he liked the least, even if he couldn't always express it as openly as other people. Remember when Batista reported to Internal Affairs that he didn't see a gun before Doakes chased down and killed Bayard? Cops are known to protect their own and hold the line, even in the clearest instances of corrupt behavior. So when word spread around the office that Batista had cooperated with IA, it didn't go over very well. Despite being the superior to the uniformed officers, Batista's subordinates began disrespecting and openly mocking him. Who should come to his defense but Doakes? Doakes ensured that all of the jokes and disrespect directed towards Batista stopped immediately. He used his position as the sergeant to get them all in line right then and there. Doakes didn't feel betrayed by Batista because he knew that he was only trying to do the right thing by being honest with his account to IA. Doakes respected Batista's commitment to justice because it is something that he felt strongly about himself. Again, Doakes showed just how good of a person he really was. He could have been spiteful towards Batista. He could have stayed silent when the other cops were bullying his partner, but he didn't. Even if he had lost his job because of that investigation, Doakes definitely wouldn't have blamed Batista, and he wouldn't have regretted killing Bayard, knowing what he was guilty of back in Haiti. More important than any one person's opinion to Doakes was his desire to do what he thought was right. Overzealous, sure. Unfriendly, definitely. But a villain? A bad guy? A corrupt cop? No. Doakes was only so deeply disliked because he wasn't personable, because of his no-nonsense attitude, not because he was actually a bad person or a crooked cop. And why is it that viewers are so quick to forgive Dexter for all of his flaws, but not Doakes? If the trauma Dexter lived through as a child makes his incredibly selfish and criminal behavior behavior seem at least somewhat excusable, why can't the same charitability be extended to Doakes? He had a horrible childhood, and there was no Harry to come in and save him. He had to endure the abuse and trauma for far longer than Dexter. Doakes just had to deal with what his father did to him and his family until he could escape to the military. And even there, no relief came. He had to withstand some of the worst things a person can imagine, and even when he could have collapsed in on himself and become a selfish, destructive force, he didn't. He dedicated the rest of his life to protecting and serving. He didn't have to do that. He was a veteran, and instead of getting any accolades or comfort when he retired from the military, he was treated like a pariah. And sadly for many veterans around the world, that story is all too familiar. It's also important to note that when Dexter kills killers, we all applaud him. He is celebrated by fans. Yet when Doakes does the same, it's seen as less noble somehow, as if he's simply giving in to his impulse to kill more than he's actually trying to achieve justice. It's very clearly the other way around. It's Dexter who kills to satiate urges, using his code to cover up the fact that he just likes killing people. Doakes has far more control than Dexter could ever even dream of. He knows that he can't go around killing indiscriminately, but Doakes still kills only when he has to in order to avenge victims or to protect himself and his team. It's not clear if Doakes has even ever killed an innocent person. Meanwhile, Dexter has done so plenty of times, whether intentionally, indirectly, or by mistake. And it is for that very reason that Doakes wanted to bring him to justice. Not just because Dexter was a criminal, but because he was a serial killer who would inevitably hurt innocent people if he was allowed to continue on his reckless path unchecked. And that is exactly what happened. Because of his need to kill, Dexter accumulated so many innocent victims. In fact, Doakes ended up being one of them. Let's be honest, Sergeant Doakes was not the big bad of season 2. That was Lila West. She was a manipulative maniac who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted, and what she wanted was Dexter. As a result, she would steal, lie, kidnap, and try to kill children, and even commit murder. Doakes would never even think about doing half of that to get what he wanted. The only reason people consider him a villain in season 2 is because he posed a threat to Dexter and his ability to continue killing without direct personal consequence. The truth is that for all of his aggression and defensiveness, James Doakes was a good man. Even Dexter had to recognize that. He may have been breaking the first rules of the code by not eliminating Doakes once he finally did catch him, but Dexter knew that there was nothing about Doakes that deserved a spot on his table. They may have hated each other, but not only would Dexter have had trouble rationalizing the decision to kill Doakes, but fans would have seen Dexter much less favorably if he had killed Doakes, just like we did when he killed Logan in New Blood. And honestly, that just shows that deep down we all knew that Doakes was not a bad guy at all. James Doakes wasn't a villain. He had the best intentions in every investigation and executed them to the best of his ability, especially for someone as damaged as he was. Doakes was considerate and instructable. From Maria to Deb to Batista, he was protective and supportive of his team. A lot of people stop analyzing Doakes after they see how he treated Dex, but there is so much more to him than that. He is possibly one of the most misunderstood characters in the Dexter universe. He was incredibly smart, caring, and dedicated, and honestly, it was probably that level of dedication that led to his death. Maria tried to convince him to back off of Dexter, much like with Bayard and every other killer Doakes wanted to bring in. He just couldn't let it go. And soon enough, years after his death, he would be vindicated in the eyes of everyone he worked with. But it would be too late. Maria LaGuerta, Deborah Morgan, and Angel Batista would all be dead in Dexter's wake. The one person who is possibly more of a villain than Doakes would ever be. Doakes deserved so much better than he got, but his legacy and the truth of who he was lives on. James Doakes was not a bad person. He was simply horribly misunderstood, and that is a true tragedy that even Dexter is haunted by. If you liked this analysis, check out our video on why Leon Prater's downfall was so satisfying, and please remember to like and subscribe. As always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.